Joining me now live for more on this is Associate Professor Matthew Sussex. He's a fellow at ANU Strategic and Defence Studies Centre. Thanks for your time. I guess to start off, first of all, let's just fact-check a bit of what he had to say. No Western nation has actually threatened Russia with nuclear attack. Russia is the one threatening, and that the crime is apparently helping out Ukraine to defend its territory. Nobody's encroached on Russian territory.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, Russia has 6,000 nuclear warheads, which is probably more than enough to deter NATO, even if it was threatening Russia and Russian territory, which in fact it isn't. And you're absolutely right. The aggressor here is Russia. Russia is the country that invaded. Ukraine is the one that is facing appalling human rights violations against its citizens, the loss of its territory, and the complete obliteration of all of its infrastructure.
All right, so it might sound obvious, but I thought, why don't we start on that anyway? The mobilisation, we're talking possibly 300,000 troops. The number itself, will it get to that? When as well? If there's a big delay, how much of a game changer will be? And I guess what will the quality of the troops be as well?
Yeah, these are all excellent questions. I think probably Russia will struggle to come up with 300,000. But Putin needs a considerable number to deploy into the Ukrainian meat grinder, because frankly he's already used 60 to 70% of his entire conventional forces in Ukraine. They've been there for 7 months. And frankly, they are exhausted. They've had no rest whatsoever. So probably what Putin is trying to do here is to create a sort of brand new army from scratch, which will be a sort of blocking force over the course of the winter. Certainly would not be wanting to take territory or trying to take territory or anything like that. As to their effectiveness, well, soldiers take a long time to train. And the Russian government doesn't seem to have time for that. So there's the prospect of ill-trained, ill-equipped individuals with pretty low morale who don't really want to go and fight in Ukraine being sent off to the front lines. And I think that bodes pretty badly for Russia's military performance in the coming months.
So to what you alluded to there, I suppose the best thing it might get them is more time, and you have exhaustion on the Russian side. It would be exhaustion on the Ukrainian side, albeit morale is crucial and theirs is up. On the flip side, does this stiffen Western resolve Ukraine? The big edge it has had is advanced weapons it's getting from the West, and more seemingly are on the way.
Yeah, that's right. The West, and particularly the United States, has been fairly careful about the types of weapons it does provide to Ukraine. Certainly, it's tried to avoid anything with very long range that would allow the Ukrainians to strike Russian territory beyond the border areas. But I think this does stiffen the resolve of NATO, the United States and European Union countries, because effectively, although it's Putin saying, I'm in this for the long haul, it's increasingly, I think, an act of desperation on his part. He's not going to have the same type of military effectiveness that he did in the first few weeks of the conflict, and it's starting to look like he's scraping the bottom of the barrel.
What do you read into China's reaction? So the official Chinese reaction was just to encourage both sides towards peace talks. In the past few days, we've had Vladimir Putin reading out a statement which acknowledged China's concerns and questions about the invasion, which was seen as a real humiliation. Is China getting a bit sick of this? Will its support waver at all?
I think China continues to do what's been called the Beijing straddle, where it says it's effectively neutral, but it provides vocal, rhetorical support for Russia. I think that'll continue. But the very fact that Putin, and it was a fairly meek Putin at that meeting too, not one that we're used to seeing, the fact that he had to publicly acknowledge that the Chinese had worries and concerns about this is a sign, I think, very much that not only is Russia very much a junior partner in the relationship with China, but that China itself doesn't want to see this conflict go on any longer because it hurts China's brand. It doesn't help China to have as its main partner, and they signed a sort of no limits bros for life partnership in February, just before the invasion. It doesn't help China to have a country that violates state sovereignty, the first principle of international law, when the Chinese line is, of course, that they don't do that.
And you mentioned no limits. I mean, when you see Vladimir talk about nuclear possibilities and I'm not bluffing. Would he be being told right now, either directly or indirectly by President Xi, hey, if you go down that path, we're not supporting you? Because Russia's economy, without China's help right now, collapses, right? And then it would be game over for Putin.
That's right. Putin has very few places to turn when it comes to economic partners. And it's mainly China, it's partly India. Both those countries would find it very, very difficult to support Putin in any way, shape or form if he crosses the nuclear threshold. And look, it's militarily doesn't make very much sense anyway. It's a very long front line that the Russians and Ukrainians are fighting along, and he'd have to use quite a few nuclear weapons, tactical nukes, to blow a hole in Ukrainian lines. And I think that would probably be a bridge too far for both Beijing and for Delhi as well.
Thankfully. Matthew Sussex, thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tom.